Hello. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second installment of the American Corner Maseru's Women's History Month virtual interview series. My name is Madingani Madiehe. I work for the Public Affairs section of the U.S. Embassy as the Cultural Affairs, the Senior Cultural Affairs Assistant. During the month of March, we'll be featuring exciting conversations with local thought leaders and experts who are working to build a more equitable future in Lesotho by empowering women and girls across all sectors of society. I hope you'll join us each Wednesday at noon for this exciting series on Facebook Live. Today, I am so excited to welcome our second guest for this series, the indomitable M'e Mpho Letima. M'e Mpho is a doctoral researcher and accomplished development practitioner and the founder of Gender Empowerment, Entrepreneurship and Media Institute, otherwise known as JAM Institute. JAM is a community-based award-winning innovation, coaching and mentorship hub. M'e Mpho JAM Institute Group is a social enterprise incubator empowering youth, especially young women, to build social enterprises and ecosystems that will develop and sustain strong value and supply chains for enterprise sustainability. It has been ranked by the African Union as the top 20 most innovative spaces for youth, women, and girls empowerment in Africa. M'e Mpho is also a cultural and creative industry practitioner and has founded, amongst others, the Lesotho Fashion Designers Association, as well as the Motion Pictures Association of Lesotho, both of which are implementing partners of the Department of Culture. She has been a fellow in different capacities, first as a Carl Malmberg Fellow at the University of Pittsburgh, with a focus on development research, monitoring and evaluation in the education and health sector. And then at M'e Mpho, you're going to have to help me with the name of this institution. Duquesne? At Duquesne University and the Midwife Center. She was also part of the African Leadership Center Peace and Security Fellowship at King's College in the United Kingdom, as well as the University of Nairobi. Following this, she moved on to International Peace Institute in New York and the African Union as a Peace and Security Fellow under the auspices of the African Leadership Center in 2015 to 2016. In 2015, M'e Mpho was selected as one of the 22 upcoming cultural entrepreneurship learners by the African Arts Institute in Cape Town. You have done it all, have you not? Thank you so much, M'e Mpho, for joining us. Without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So, just a note to those who are watching via Facebook Live, during this session, if you have any questions for M'e Mpho, please do enter them into the chat box and we'll be sure to ask them. Thank you. So, M'e Mpho, you have been involved in the creative industry in Lesotho for a long time, and you have created a name for yourself as a custodian of the arts and technology space. Can you start by telling us who M'e Mpho Letima is and what has inspired the work that you do here in Lesotho?
Thank you, Mema Dingane, and thank you for the audience. I don't know where to start because it's a very long story, which I'll try to keep it short. My story in the cultural space didn't start in Maseru. Let us clear that one out. It started in Tabatseka, then Mokotlo, with a flower. It's called Mohabebi. Yes. So basically what happened is that I was fascinated by this flower, which if you live or if you're from the lowlands, probably most of you don't know it. Only people who grew up in the mountain area will know about Mohabebi. It's sweet, it's tangible, it's beautiful. So for me, I don't know what it did to me. When I first saw it, I was around 9 or 10. I can't remember. I asked myself a question: what can I do with this flower? That was my lifetime assignment. I knew I wanted to do something with that flower, and but I had never seen anybody who is a Lesotho who had a fashion label or who had something that was named after a flower in Lesotho. So years later, I founded a fashion label called M'e. That's where they yes. So that I would say that is where my creative space, or at least as part of my self-awareness, started with that. Because also I was very good with making clothes. I wasn't particularly taught how to make clothes, but I would steal my mother's materials and steal and make clothes, and she recognized, and my parents, they recognized that there must be something. But other than that, really, that is where my creativity came from. But without any inspiration or anybody to watch up to, it took longer. In terms of the creative, the tech space, it more or less started in 2003. I used to be a teacher. I'm still a teacher, I'm an educator. So we had a project, and one of the innovative issues that we had to address was how do we speak with other children and communities around the country about HIV/AIDS, but using young people's voices. At that time, it was still a taboo for young people to be talking to parents about HIV/AIDS. So our project was centered around conversational issues on HIV/AIDS and sexual and reproductive health issues. And what we had plugged into that project was that we would use computers. Computers in Tabazeka were unheard of. We would use computers to share stories. And so we would go to communities and then bring the stories and then type them in the computers and then email them. So that was the innovation then, email. I think because it was a new thing, a curious thing for me, my principal at that time, there was another project that came, the NEPA project, a pilot project amongst a few schools in Lesotho where they gave away computers. So when these NEPA people came in and we talked to my principal, and she says to them, oh, by the way, I don't think there is anybody who can do this. There is a little one here. Mpho, where are you? Come and help these people. You are the only one who can do this thing. And I'm like, and what am I supposed to do exactly? It's like, okay, I think you know how to work around computers. You are going to be their liaison person. So I think out of curiosity, some of these things have just followed me around. So I've always been curious about the tech space. I found it quite fascinating. And also because coming from a rural mountain areas, for me, I think at heart I've always been a development something. I've always wanted to have access to these things that are only accessed by children and communities in the urban centers or in the urban areas.
It really was a calling for you, M'e Mpho. It's absolutely no mistake that you are here where you are today. So you are also the founder and president of GEM Institute, an organization that is dedicated to encouraging young women and girls to engage with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects. Could you tell us a bit about how GEM Institute got started and what was the inspiration there?
Okay, thank you. The inspiration was a Moroccan woman, or rather an American Moroccan woman. I was at the University of Pittsburgh then, and honestly, I don't think I had ever come across a young woman in Lesotho who had their own organization then. That was 2009. And in class, so she makes an announcement that she's establishing an organization. She wants to pursue an agricultural project in Morocco. She's around 25, and I'm like, she has an organization. She's 25 in Morocco. So I volunteered, like, okay, I'll be part of this thing. And we were to meet on a weekend to go and talk about, how best she could go about what she wants to do. And I came in as an African because I was the only black person in that group. So during the meeting, when we sat, there were engineers, there were, geospatial specialists, you name it, all these difficult things. And I sit right at the back of the room, and everybody comes with a well-prepared PowerPoint presentation. I have nothing, a typical I have nothing, I have not prepared anything. Because to me, when I process meetings, is that we will go and then we'll listen. So these guys have done their research and they have these nice presentations. And at the end of when everybody else has done this, she says, Gabriela says to me, so Mpho, do you have anything for us? And I'm like, okay, actually I did. I lied. Okay? Actually I did, but I think I'm a bit off base because I didn't realize the diversity of people that we're going to, that are surrounding your project. So what I've decided is that I can see nobody's taking research from an African context. So what I'm going to do is try to bring everything together in the context of the African, what you will do in Morocco, so that I am the African voice, and they thought I was the smartest woman in the room. So I'll be your researcher from Africa. So for me, I came home saying, if this young woman, because I was a bit older than her then, if this young woman can do this, what would stop me from doing it in Lesotho? I knew it was going to be difficult because I didn't have anybody to look up to. But I came back home with a one mission. I am going to set up an organization. I didn't know what its name would be. But it would be an organization that had something to do with technology, because I took a subject in geospatial something. It was difficult, I failed it. I was helped by a German guy to pass it. And I was quite fascinated by the help that I got from my classmates and my colleagues at Duquesne University to help me to go forward. And when I would express these aspirations, these ambitions that are what I want to do when I get back home, I would get this full 101% support to say, yeah, go and do it. The German guy actually told me that, look, you are struggling with the technology thing. How about you go home and then you start talking about it? The tech component in the German Institute came later because of that. It was just supposed to be a research institute where we research on gender issues, access and youth and other things. So all these other components came in later, and I'll tell you why later on, why we did that. So basically it was out of jealousy and and fascination from another younger woman.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that. How old is Jam Institute, Hannah?
2020, it was 5 years old, so we started, yes.
So it's 6 this year?
It's 6 this year.
Okay, and when did you incorporate the tech bit of it?
We actually started with the talk in 2016.
Right.
So a year later.
Okay. All right. So 6 years later, M'e Mpho. I remember growing up, in high school, having the misconception, I'll call it that mezzo tata, science tata, physics tata, and I'd go home and I'd be met with the same theories, from my parents, from my family, and it was the general conclusion within a lot of my friends, high school at that time. Did you grow up with that misconception, more especially as a teacher? Did you witness it happening with your students? And would you say much has changed since those days?
It's a yes and no. And I'll start with the no of it because I think it kind of explains the situation on the ground. Mm-hmm. Let us go back to the primary level. And when you look at the national results, then when we used to have the Standard 7 results, girls performed so well. in all the STEM subjects so well. And the question is, what happens in primary schools that does not happen in high schools? And these are not the kind of questions that we ask ourselves.
Yes.
To say, the environment that a girl child grows in, is it conducive for her to be able to learn to her optimum level? And I will say, I'll take myself, because sometimes these things are easier when you become the example of what you're talking about. In primary, up until when I did Form C, I was top of my class in mathematics, science, mathematics, and all the STEM subjects. When I got to high school, my Form D, I was bottom of the class.
What changed?
Exactly. And these are some of the curious questions that I keep asking myself, like, what changed? And I think in part, I do have an answer for that, but I cannot say it has been validated or it has been researched about so that we can say data says this. When I was in primary and when I was in secondary, up until I was in Form C, all my teachers were women. All of them. Except one. In Form B, I had a math teacher who was American. In Form A and in Form C, I had teachers that were German and female. In Form D and Form 5, it was a local and a male. And his fascination about me was that, because at that time there was this thing which I don't know if it was good or bad, because when you had done well with your STEM subjects in secondary, automatically you'd be split into two. Those that do accounts and the easy, they said they were easy and they're not, and then those that did STEM subjects. So automatically I fell in the STEM subject class, and I would be bottom of the class. And he had been told that she is one of the smartest. If you're going to get your B's and A's, and she is one of them. And he could not understand what had happened. I didn't know what had happened. I would be given remedial classes and I would still fail with pride. There was a time when I was failing with pride. I was happy to be failing. So it is a question that is not that easy. It is easy to ask, but there are so many responses to it. So is it difficult? Yes, it is, because it is not only a Lesotho problem. It is a global problem. It is a global problem. I guess except the Asian countries, because the Asian countries have intentionally made sure that STEM is not just subjects but a way of life. And I think maybe that is where the missing link is, that we have failed to contextualize and localize and domesticate these subjects into who we are as Basotho or as Africans. So for us to translate what this formula means, in my context when I talk about Mohabebi, it becomes two worlds apart. And it shouldn't really. So it's a research going on. Unfortunately, we don't do this kind of research, and we have just lost somebody who was really passionate about this kind of research, Dr. Mudisana. Yes, he was fascinated by this kind of questions, and he had not yet answered what you are asking.
That's why the likes of you are here to carry the torch, M'e Mpho. Speaking of Mohabebe, some people, I definitely classify you as a creative who continues to explore the use of technology in the development agenda of Lesotho. So I want to hear from you, how important is the relationship between creativity and these STEM disciplines, and how do you marry the two?
Another fascinating question, because we have moved on. We no longer call it STEM, we call it STEAM. Yes, because the art component of it becomes very important. When you take mathematics and science and then you turn them into engineering, that is art. Most engineers are artists because you have to design something, but it has to come with some level of technology. for it to, to become live. So I think context also is very important, Mema Dingane, when we ask this kind of questions to say what intermarries what relates into what, and how come these things are connected or disconnected. It will boil down to our context, our schooling system, where we see art as something that belongs to people that are not intellectually gifted. And we see STEM as something that belongs to people that are intellectually gifted. And we create this chasm of differences that are not necessary. In fact, if you were to go back in history, you will find that people who founded these STEM subjects, or who were proponents of STEM subjects, they were artists. So the question is, what is it that has motivated us into seeing those that come from a different type of art to say, you don't belong to this type of art? We need to be creative. In fact, every human being is born creative, all of us. Language is art. Why do we plug it into technology? Why do you have Python as a language? Why do you have HTML as a language? Why do you have whatever as a language of computers? And we cannot see that as you are reading your tablet, or asking me from your tablet, it's actually art plus technology. So I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. But you asked about Mokhabebe and technology and art, to say, for the longest of time, we have had technologies that we didn't call technologies. The catalog, you remember the catalog, the order in catalog, the order, you wanna say, you pay exactly, you page through, and then we are also exactly. What was that? It was technology. Why is it that we're talking about technology now as if then or then it wasn't technology? So you took a paper-based technology, saw something that you like, a fashion item that you liked, go to the post bank, ordered it, have a code, and then it comes back. When you go back to the post bank to collect it, you have to have that code. Isn't that what we are doing? So Mokhabebe, basically, if we were to take it as a product, for instance, and take your technology as a service, so we are creating either a supply chain or a value chain. And basically that's what we are doing with GEM, to say, can we create very strong ecosystems around products that we produce so that they go all the way, and whether the way is going to be on a digital platform or person to person or business to business, we have to understand that these things don't live in isolation, or they don't move in isolation. These platforms are created for movement, and they are related.
It's a lot of work, M'e Mpho, that you have undertaken. So my next question is, in this line of work, what are some of the barriers you have come across, particularly in this industry, and how do you think we can move forward from them as a country in a constructive manner?
There are a lot of barriers, and sometimes it feels like we are old tape recorders because we keep repeating ourselves. We know the story. Why? Access.
Absolutely.
And access in terms of the physical infrastructure. What you have, your tablet. How many of, in any given office, let me, scale it up to say, in any given office, other than a cell phone, how many people have a tablet? Okay, so we'll go back on to say how many people have cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And the introduction of cell phones to us, what did that mean? Coming from the technology of the headset, a phone was about talking.
Yeah.
But now we have a cell phone, which is a cell phone calculator, a cell phone
alarm clock,
a cell phone. See? So when I talk about access, because sometimes when people talk about access, they talk about access from a distance. access is even in your hand, like how optimally, how do you maximize that tool, that technological device that has everything? What do you do with it? That is access. And I'll give you an example of what happened. We are going around the country setting up boot camps in other districts. And one of the questions that we have is that, okay, if you are in Tabateka now, and you are in Kutin now, have you ever thought of developing a technology? And they look at you blankly like, developing a technology? Okay, you are massive. And I'm like, no, I'm not even from there. Do you know who developed Facebook? Do you know who developed WhatsApp? Do you know? And they look at you like, they were developed by people? Some will know, yes, Mark developed Facebook, and you're like, but you know how old he was. And when you start unpacking the story, how some of these applications that we use, that use us, even because we have stopped using them, now they use us because we are addicted to them. The fascination and the curiosity that you see on these young people's faces is just mind-boggling. In Tabateka, an emerging musician, he said, M'e Mpho, what's it again? And that's where the Holy Grail is, like.
That's the story.
And that's what we do. We can actually do them. So we teach them how to code, how to do Python, how to do HTML, how to do JavaScript, so that they can figure out how to do these things for themselves. So that is how close accessibility can be, and how far it can be if there's nobody who holds your hand closer to things that you want. Yeah.
Okay. Given some of these barriers that you have highlighted and these challenges, as well as what we do know about the global struggle for women to get their footing into STEM industries, what is your advice to young Basotho women who are interested in exploring a career in a STEM-related field, but they just don't have the confidence or the know-how or the understanding that as much as these have been male-dominated industries in the past, there's a new movement where women are exploring more and more of these fields. What are your words of wisdom to this girl?
I think I'll go back to your previous question. What do we do as a country to move forward? Because you cannot get into the global community if you're not part of a certain community, which will be your country. It is there is an easy response to this one, but also because it touches on different layers. It is a structural issue where we are saying, do we have structures that support this kind of an accelerated process that says our girls should? Do we have that? If we were to use my data that I used on myself, that maybe I did well in my STEM subject because I was taught by women, the majority of STEM teachers are still men. So it means already, if we were to use that, I know it's a very rudimentary and very simplified way of thinking about things, but if we were to use that data point as a point of reference, it is not going to be very, very, very easy for the girl child. But with platforms like GEM, with platforms like others that are doing similar work, where we are saying, maybe we need to step out of the classroom, the traditional classroom, and establish other alternative platforms to talk about these things in a much more simpler way, rather than just an algebra or probability, but talk about it in Sesotho. A consultation to say, okay, so that's fine. But Okay, but because you've accepted the status quo. So as long as we have this confidence building conversations to say we can actually do it, and I think what we are trying to do from the country point of view so that we can then move in the global space is that with GEM specifically, we are trying to manufacture women whom they could, whom we could use as a reference point. Right now we have one who developed an app. She's an engineer, no background in coding or programming or all the fancy tech things. And when she moved in as a fellow, we told her that we know that you are an engineer, but we want to make you uncomfortable. And we are going to make you so uncomfortable such that you come out of the space or you emerge out of the space having developed something. As an engineer, it's easy for her to rebel because she adopts some of those male traits. So she will push back to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And we said, you're going to do it. We have done that with the fashion designers as well. We are doing that with the film. We have a new film group now. We are going to do the same thing. To say, for you to code, yes, when we are good with mathematics, it may be easier. But coding is like being a carpenter, being able to match these things, the ones and zeros, to come up with something. If you can do that, you don't necessarily need mathematics, especially for simple things. So we start from there. Let us start from simple things so that when you graduate into more complex issues, then you'll say, aha, now I understand. We have a new fellow, they are interns from one of the universities, Lesotho University, I might as well drop the name. And when they came in and we told them what is it that we expect them to do in terms of developing of apps, one of them said, I wish I could have started here before I started my software engineering program at Wood. Does it mean she was less brilliant then? No. She's just saying, this for me is so empowering. Had I known there was a platform for this, maybe my choices would, exactly. So if we take it a few layers down at primary level, secondary level, it is part of career guidance. It is part of, empowerment process. It is part of confidence building process to say, you can do it when they see somebody who is like them, who has done it.
I'm definitely feeling empowered. What I'm hearing you say is that, these subjects are for everyone. You don't have to be a straight A student. You don't have to be born with some sort of special talent or gift. As long as you have the willpower to learn to code, it's something you can do.
But,
yes.
I didn't say something about being part of the global community. Now I remember that.
Which I think is very important.
Very important. Being the global community, that's where the challenge is. Because to be part of the global community, now that's where competition comes in. And being competitive when you come from spaces that we come from, it's hard. It's hard because at least understanding some of the system, one of them being the UN system, I've had the privilege to be part of the observers of how the UN system works. And when you are told that, it is very interesting when we look into our database of the internship system, that almost all European countries are represented and they are already preparing the young ones to be part of the UN system representation. And you think about back home to say, oh my goodness, we don't even have that. So how are they going to compete with other children, other young people who have been prepared years ago to be part of this? So the same thing happens when you come into the tech space in terms of the global space, things move fast. Something is changing today as we speak now. So being part of that global system becomes a bit harder if you really don't have a support system that will get you there. So we need to intentionally make sure that we manufacture those children that will be part of the competitive global community. China does that. Taiwan does that. India does that. So if they are already doing it and we are sitting here and twiddling our fingers, we will not be part of that. Some who will be able to go there, it will be out of luck, or really out of personal determination, or maybe because they come from a background, a family background that supports that. But we don't have a system that supports that. So we have to have an intentional and elaborate and deliberate system that manufactures those kids whom we can identify at a very young age to say, we are seeing talent, because talent management, that's where it starts. We are seeing capability, we are seeing potentiality for them to be part of the community, the global community. So it's hard work.
Support system.
Support system is the most important thing. And in Lesotho, we don't have a very strong support system. What we have is a paging system.
You're right, M'e Mpho,
Yes.
and it's sad to witness. It's really sad to watch, Basotho not being supportive of each other. And the minute Me Tsapang, who was our guest for last week, was saying that the minute you get access into a global competition to go and represent Lesotho, instead of us supporting you as one of our own, and basically she was saying Papa Fela, the support will come hopefully eventually.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, that's the sum up for today. All right, moving on. As the founder of several organizations and businesses that have gained momentum in the country, I must say, both in Lesotho and on the continent, what would you say has been your biggest achievement to date?
Acceptance to failure.
Please say that again.
My biggest achievement has been acceptance to failure.
Acceptance to failure. M'e Mpho, please elaborate. I'm liking this. Please elaborate.
Okay, so this is where I come from as a Mosotho child, because I'm going to speak to this more from a contextual point of view and exactly the point that we just talked about, the paging system in terms of the support system. And I have been lucky in that maybe I've been aware from a very young age, also because I have a personality, I'm an introvert. And being an introvert is painful because people can say anything that they want about you, and you don't have the opportunity to say, to return the favor, because you are sitting, at the dark side of the room.
Minding your own business.
Exactly, minding your own business. And you are able to, or I am able to, identify gaps even before I get myself into trouble. So most times when I establish this kind of platforms, what I tell myself is I am curious how long it will take me to fail until I succeed. The reason being that one thing that I learned with the Americans was that they would say to you, just do it. Do it and see if you fail. If you fail, it's okay, then you can learn from it. And then once you learn from it, your knowledge system, your personal knowledge system deepens, becomes more robust. You think better, you think much more clearly. Now you think with intention that you know this can be done. So if you can function from a place of ambition, because I think there's a difference between people who function from a place of ambition to achieve, and then people like me, who function from a place of aspiration to fail, of passion to fail and see what failure will result into. So basically that's what I do, to be comfortable with failure. Most people are not comfortable with failure because it embarrasses them, because it decreases their social standing, because it makes them feel like, or makes them look like they don't know what they are doing, because it, an array of reasons why people are afraid of failure. And that for me has always been, I am going to fail. And from my failure, I am going to learn from that to succeed. So anything else, and there are quite a number of those that I will talk about as we keep on your questions, that have failed. And I'm pretty comfortable with that kind of failure to say, this is how it is should be. And the reason why I am comfortable with failure, it is because most times when you establish something because it speaks to you as a person, as you. But you also want to give it to other people because you know that there might be an opportunity for common purpose. What makes you different from the others is that we don't know how to do this the same way. The how process becomes different. So when we say there is Mokhabebe and somebody says to me, so what will Mokhabebe give me? And I'm saying, nothing. It don't give you anything. Go buy Mokhabebe. It will give you pleasure if you buy. And if they are looking for something different from what I have in mind, exactly, it means our lens in terms of the common purpose changes. So it could either I have lost a customer or I've gained a customer. So the common purpose and the how become problematic. So if we don't know how the how should be done, then that's where, failure starts. And if you're not ready to answer the failure questions, then you will stop because you're too embarrassed to go forward.
I think I get it. To succeed, you must be comfortable with failure.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Okay, next question. As far as technological advancement is concerned, and you did touch on it a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to please extend. Lesotho still has quite a long way to go before the use of technology can be considered inclusive. And given that, what is your opinion on what the biggest issue for us to tackle first is? And how do you think this will improve our status at a global level, as you spoke about earlier?
Mm-hmm. I think I'll keep on going on support systems, that we have to have strong support systems, and without strong support systems, literally, there's nowhere we can go.
What does a strong support system look like to M'e Mpho?
Exactly.
Is it from a government perspective? Is it from a home family perspective? What does that look like?
It looks like a community. We have to have an ecosystem of different individuals with different skill sets, with different passions, with different ambitions, with different intentions, to have a common purpose to achieve something.
Mm-hmm.
So in the tech space, let me give you an example of what we do. We have a platform that is called Girl Tech Talk Conference. It was established in 2019. So basically what we do, we partner with schools to teach and to learn from girls about, how to work with technology, not just as a user, but as a developer and inventor. Have that conversation. It started in 2016, like I said earlier, through the program that is called Africa Code Week. For us as GEM, we asked ourselves to say, okay, we code and code and code every year. So what? What do we get out of this? And then we figured, okay, how about we bring everybody across the country, all the girls, to come and talk to each other about what their experiences about coding, about invention, about developing, and robotics, what have you. And we did. It was hard. Remember the 11th hour, we didn't know whether that conference was going to happen or not. Literally 11th hour. And then one woman. Is it okay to say her name?
Yes, go ahead.
And then one woman by the name of Dr. Ditabako. Oh my goodness, why am I forgetting her name? But she's now the chair, the CEO of Chair. I came
Council of Higher Education.
Council of Higher Education. At that time, she was with the Exams Council.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to M'e Mpho because we were on the brink of deciding whether we are going ahead with the conference the following day, and the girls were already waiting in their schools for the cars to come and pick them up. And she says to me, this conference is going to happen. I had no idea what she meant by that. It was around 9ish in the morning, and then she calls her staff, her financial controller, everybody else, and she says, I don't know this woman, but she's going to do something that is so important, and we are going to help her. I don't know if even if we have a budget, if we don't have a budget, but we are going to have to use all the resources that we have as the council to make sure that this happens. How many cars do we have? And then they looked at each other like, but the ministry, how many cars do we have? So literally she moved that space. And there is another M'e Mpho, who is the CEO of high schools, who was working hand in glove with Meditabako to make sure that this thing happened. We had support from the Ministry of Communication, Science and Technology when the minister said, okay, I hear you, you have been making a lot of noise, we need to help you. So as you can see, these people are coming from different places, and the teachers were on board. The teachers were on board, kids were on board. So you have different people that come from different spaces who are saying, we believe in this, we don't know what it is, we have never seen it happen, but we think it's important. And the girls came, and the projects were amazing, amazing things that we didn't think they could do. There is one that we still have to chase in terms of scale, because there is a lot of potential. The girls had come up with an invention that they would make a flask. When you shake it, then whatever liquid inside warms up.
A drinking flask.
Yes, a drinking flask.
Nice.
So we still have to chase that and
Absolutely.
find out if somebody can, invest in that and grow that invention. So these are just some of the, and there were quite an array of inventions and developments that these girls came up with, and you looked at them as and they interacted with each other to say, oh my goodness, what a powerful space we have created, and even a dangerous space, because if you don't continue with that, then you have created something and now you are widening the gap. So on Monday, we are continuing with that. We are going to hold a virtual conference, and this time, because we couldn't have the opportunity to go and do the projects, last year when COVID caught up with us, we held an essay competition about technology and environment and anything that they wanted, so that they could plug it into technology. So we are compiling a book, the first book that was written by girls in Lesotho about technology and other things that they liked. And we are going to launch it during the conference on Monday from 2 o'clock to from 1:30 to 3 o'clock on Monday. It will be our first virtual conference. And this time we are internationalizing it. We have 3 countries that are joining us. So these are the kind of platforms that build. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should not be perfect. We just have to do it and get on with it and make sure that it works somehow. The how process, it will work somehow.
It will work somehow.
Somehow. And the UN Technology Lab,
yes,
they actually bought into the concept. And you think you are small. And the Desitipa says, okay, I think I like what you're doing. And we're like, okay, the only best, because we don't have much, we can make you a keynote speaker. Do you mind? And he says, no, I don't mind. Talk to my communications officer. So you see the snowball effect as these people come into the space, and it no longer becomes your thing. It now becomes other people's thing.
Amazing work, M'e Mpho. And I like the fact that we are getting a footing globally as a country. Earlier you mentioned creation or Basotho developing our own products, and I'm going to go into the last question before we take questions from our viewers. How important is the growth of the STEM or STEAM, as you corrected me, STEAM sector to our economic development as a country? And in what ways do you think this development will impact Lesotho's economy in the long term?
Thank you. I'll start with the A, the art.
The art.
I'll start with it, and I'll speak to this because I want to also to touch on on the National Development Strategic Plan to say, disappointingly, creative industries is part of the current National Development Strategic Plan with no budget. It's not part of the national budget. Yes. It was not allotted anything. So you begin to ask yourself questions. Why do we have Limco Queen? Mm-hmm. Why do you have graduates from in film, in fashion, in graphic design, and the country only invests in the education, but it doesn't invest in the product development? It's a bit weird to say where do our priorities lie. I know, I understand these things, and I do appreciate them. We have the argument is that we have more urgent things.
Yes.
And you are saying you have 40% of your population as young people. Across probably the majority of that 40%, they belong in the art space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what kind of generation and what kind of nation, because this also speaks to nation building, what kind of nation are you building if you don't have strong safety nets that will catch them when they are done with the education, the formal education, and now they have to leave? Yeah? Now let us get into the STEM space. The STEM space, because it has the global upholding, it is easy for member states to get into that space, to say sciences are important, mathematics is important, technology is important, so we will create, so there are systems. What do I mean by systems and structures? We have the Ministry of Science and Technology. Mm-hmm. Huge budget. I don't know how much, but I know there is a budget there, good budget. And you say, okay, there is TV Lesotho with let us put it as it is, because if we keep sanitizing this kind of with no content, and we are not even saying there's no content in Lesotho, there is content in Lesotho.
Ample content creators.
But the systems of government, because TV Lesotho is a government institution, the systems of government that would then open doors for the creatives to create content to be viewed on TV, it's a complicated system. That says you should have 100,000 to tender. How does a young graduate 2 years out of school, where do you get 100,000? Are we also manufacturing thieves? Robbers? We should go to banks and rob banks? So if we have this disjointed systems that don't talk to what we are doing or what we are trying to achieve, then we are failing. So the science side or the STEM side is still lucky for now, because there's research on it. Then you can throw a bit of money when you talk about science. There are in high schools, for instance, in primary schools, science is a subject, mathematics is a subject. So there is a bit of investment there. In fact, not a bit, a lot of investment there. Now, yes, the curriculum they are trying to bring in entrepreneurship and creativity as part of the creative, or rather the livelihood component, so that these young kids, when they graduate or they're done with education, then they can sustain their own lives as they grow older. Now the question is, do you have teachers who understand this kind of curriculum? Working with teachers ourselves, when we get to teachers, they say, we have no idea how to go about this, because I am an English teacher. How do I do entrepreneurship if I am an English teacher? How do I do entrepreneurship or arts if I'm a math teacher? So you see, and some of them have been trained, they've been prepared for this, but changing the mindset to embrace this kind of things, that is where there is lack of investment. To say, how far have you gone with your teachers so that they are comfortable to deliver this curriculum to the optimum? So there's a lot to say about this, but I know that we are under
a bit pressed for time. Yeah. Thank you so much, M'e Mpho. That was the last of my questions. It has been an honor to pick your brain, and to find out more about the work that you're doing, particularly with JAM Institute. So at this juncture, I'm going to turn it over to questions from our audience on Facebook. Tingad, and we have about 5 minutes on the clock, so please try to be as succinct as possible in answering them. The first one is, there's a huge divide in participation of girls and women in STEM, and only a few organizations that are operating in silos, working in the space. From your view, is there a desire for collaboration in order to maximize impact?
JAM Institute, I think, yes. JAM Institute, definitely. We have helped others. But I think living in a community or in an environment that thrives on competition, sometimes these collaborations become a bit more complex. So we need to work on ourselves. As those organizations.
We need to work on ourselves.
Yes.
I like that. But there is a sense of desire for collaboration.
Some yes, some no.
To some extent.
Yes, to some extent.
All right. The next question is, as a woman working in a typically male-dominated field, what is your personal philosophy that has helped you to keep pushing when you face adversity?
You
are more than welcome. Quotable quote.
Yes. Because that is exactly the kind of feedback that you get when you are a woman who is pushing, boundaries in the film industry, in the fashion industry, in the tech space, and when you stand up to say, but this is going to be done, you said, silly.
So that's it.
Okay, but sa and still be respect. Sa sometimes it is because people don't want to be held accountable and they don't want to be challenged on principle. So sa is just a word to say don't. So don't allow yourself to be told not to do something.
Basically, be assertive.
Be assertive. Because sometimes assertive,
yes.
But you still have to respect yourself.
Yes.
And that is the good social standing.
Be assertive but respectful.
Be respectful.
Got you. The next question is, what is the level of appreciation of the impact of tech on development for young people? So, how much do young people appreciate tech? I think is what the question is.
It's more than we can emphasize, man. The levels of appreciation are mind-boggling, literally mind-boggling. Remember, we have a generation that thrives on technology. We were in Butabote and Putin Tabazeka and Beria the other time, and we have a standard question: what happens to you when you don't have data, for you to get into Facebook? We have withdrawal symptoms. We get depressed. So that is how dependent our younger generation is on technology. What we need to do is just to move a step forward to say, don't just be dependent on something that has been developed by somebody else. Try to use the same device to develop your own, to improve your life. Yeah.
With that, M'e Mpho, let's please close here. Today's conversation has been both enlightening and empowering for me. Thank you so much for your continued efforts in empowering young women in Lesotho to pursue and explore STEM-related subjects and industries. We are grateful for your time and your insight on such an important topic, especially as we move towards a more technologically advanced world. And to you on Facebook, thank you for joining us for today's conversation, and we hope to see you next Wednesday at noon. M'e Mpho, do you have any final thoughts, closing remarks for today?
My closing remarks would just be, this is for everyone, that can we start working on building and developing strong support systems for everyone, especially young people. We have a generation of frustrated young people because they don't have social security nets that catch them to advance their dreams, that catch them to advance their dreams in art, creativity, even technology, even though it is such a hyper word. We don't even have those, or very strong ones, that would advance for us to be competitive at a global level, competitive at the continental level, competitive just so that we rise above our own pettiness. I think we come from a very, sometimes very, I don't know, but sometimes it's like we have petty tendencies that just block us from doing what we can do. We are an amazing nation, and if we could just try to shed ourselves of the paging system, we page ourselves. We page people not to be great. We are uncomfortable with greatness.
That part. Is a lot to chew on. Thank you so much, M'e Mpho, for these nuggets of wisdom. I wish we had a little bit more time, but unfortunately, we are going to have to close our session for today. Thank you, M'e, and keep on doing the work that you're doing. We see you, we appreciate you, and we are watching.
Thank you,
everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy.